Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. How you guys doing? Apparently 358 years ago, London burned down to the ground pretty much. It was just gone. And I had no idea. I don't know anything about it. I heard about it in a video a couple days ago, and I needed to know more. So I've got this video here by Channel 5. I'm going to react to this. How did the Great Fire of London start? That's a good place to start. Hopefully it goes into more than just, how it started. I can't imagine they talk for 10 minutes about just how, the spark that started the fire. Unless it's a really interesting story. I don't know. Anyway. I am intrigued. Let's do it. The Great Fire.
In Thomas Farriner's Pudding Lane...
Whoa, that's cool. You guys have that? Wow.
Bakery. It's now almost 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday the 2nd of September. The street is narrow and dark, filled with a mixture of tall, overhanging houses. And as it's the dead of night, the street is empty of people.
1 a.m.
Everything's quiet.
This fire lasted multiple days. I mean, that makes sense for it to burn down the whole city.
Pudding Lane, apart from the occasional bark of a stray dog.
The Farriners finally went to bed an hour ago. Their 23-year-old daughter Hannah was the last to go to sleep after getting a light for a candle.
No, Hannah.
Later, the Farriners would insist that everything was absolutely normal when Hannah went downstairs at midnight and that the fire in their oven was definitely out. But they would say that, wouldn't they?
We now believe the most likely cause of the Great Fire was a stray ember which ignited a pile of twigs stored in the bakehouse. Unnoticed.
Oh my God. Isn't that just remarkable? To me, that's just crazy. That's like the best. Fire is always the best example of the butterfly effect. You know what I mean? Just one ember. One ember from the baker's oven, and the city burns down.
It started to take hold.
Thomas Farriner's teenage son and apprentice, also called Thomas, woke up. He realized the ground floor was on fire and immediately woke up his family who was sleeping upstairs.
Trapped by the smoke, their only escape route was to crawl out of an upstairs window and onto a neighbour's roof, raising the alarm at the tops of their voices.
This corner of London sprang into life as people around Pudding Lane realized they were facing their most terrifying enemy, fire.
The fire began to spread incredibly quickly, and within minutes it had moved from the bakehouse to other parts of the building, with sparks even leaping towards the houses next door. But why would the fire go on to
I wonder how the houses were constructed back then.
Consume the
like what material?
Buildings around Pudding Lane so rapidly.
Jettying created more space inside a house without obstructing the street below. But it did mean that buildings were dangerously close together.
In London, you'd have had a street at the bottom wide enough for a cart or a wagon, but at the top, you could probably shake hands with your neighbour.
Really, you'd be
That is so cool. I never knew that.
that close at the top?
That's actually really smart in a way, and I have never seen that and never heard of that.
With the tops of the houses packed so tightly, the fire around Pudding Lane could easily jump from jetty to jetty, from roof to roof. In the 17th century, many of the city's walls were made using a technique called wattle and daub. These were panels of woven wood known as wattle, which were then filled with a mud mixture, the daub. But it was this method of construction that
literally looks like it's made to catch fire.
Actually helped the houses around Pudding Lane to ignite. At the Exover fire testing lab in Warrington, flammability expert Beth Dean is helping me subject an ancient-style wattle and daub panel to extreme temperatures.
You can see the wattle on the inside, the timber. You can also see little bits of straw in there as well.
Surprisingly, despite temperatures in excess of 400 degrees centigrade, the wattle and daub panel doesn't ignite.
The mud is almost protected. Well, it is. It's protecting that wooden frame on the inside. So it's proving really hard to...
I like how he caught himself there. It's almost protecting. No, it is.
Set it alight.
Yeah, but if just some fire gets to the actual wood, I feel like
process is used to
it's
test
all
the
done.
flammability of materials to modern British standards.
I mean, I guess it would be hard for the oxygen to get in there too, but
And the wattle and daub seems to have passed.
the way they were woven together, it looked like there was a bunch of air gaps.
Performance you can get on this test is a Class 1, and it's achieved a Class 1 performance.
I mean, there's hardly any damage at all.
That's correct.
So by today's British standards, this would have kind of nominally passed.
That's correct, yeah. It's done
Wow.
really well.
Okay.
But if they were made of such fire-resistant material, why did so many of the houses around Pudding Lane burst into flames? The answer lies in the fact that many buildings in the poorer areas where the fire started were not brilliantly maintained. So, by exposing the wooden wattle behind the door,
All right, in it comes.
we can test how flammable these run-down houses in the poorer areas would have been.
So we can see there is some action already.
It has
and
caught
it has
fire, hasn't it,
ignited,
already?
yeah.
And you can see the difference. That's less than a minute and it's caught fire.
The houses around Pudding Lane were in a similar state of disrepair, making them all highly flammable. And it was only a matter of time before they were destroyed by the fire.
Without that mud there to protect it, it's basically just a big pile of tinder.
There'd been fires in London before 1666, right?
Yes, we tend to think of it as the first serious blaze, but actually there've been loads of big fires. If you'd said Great Fire of London a few months earlier, people would have thought you were talking about 1212 when there was a huge fire.
And what were Londoners' reactions?
At first, they don't seem to have been that
That's pretty good, huh? To go 400 years without a really big fire, back when everybody was using candles and all these wooden structures.
bothered. We know that from the great commentator on the fire, Mr. Samuel Pepys.
Samuel Pepys. I love Samuel Pepys because he's always on about women he fancies, big dinners he's had, and the greatest account of the Great Fire of London.
And what he
What does he
says
say?
is that Jane, his maidservant, had woken him up about 3 o'clock in the morning, so about this time, and said there was a fire in the city, and had a look out of the window, decided it wasn't too bad, went back to bed.
Pepys, like many other Londoners, was probably thinking that all would be well. But they hadn't counted on how incompetent the man in charge of the city, Mayor Thomas Bloodworth, actually was. In the small hours as the fire was just beginning to take hold, Bloodworth had one last chance to save London before the inferno became unstoppable,
Well, what the heck did he do?
and he blew it.
He could have pulled down private houses, created a fire break, but those houses belonged to rich merchants who'd put him in power, and he didn't want to be unpopular. It's always politics.
And he said, didn't he, of the fire, a woman could piss it out?
Yes, he did.
Probably not true in this case.
It's probably not true, and also a very bad decision, because it means he's
What? As the fire is raging on behind him, he says, "Oh, a woman could piss on that." Well, you better get a woman, because it's about to destroy the whole city.
remembered for that dodgy joke, as opposed to putting out the Great Fire of London.
Well done, Thomas Bloodworth.
Damn.
As dawn broke, London was in
So they're saying they had to destroy houses to stop the fire from continuing. But those houses were, oh my God, owned by rich people. That's crazy.
utter chaos. Most people had stopped trying to put out the fire and were now desperately scrambling to save themselves and their things. Forget community spirit. Now it was every man, woman, and child for themselves.
Guys, I just did realize that if the other Great Fire was in the 1200s and then it was the 1600s, every 400 years. Hopefully I didn't just jinx London, but I'd be setting your fire alarms.
The writer Samuel Pepys takes a boat along the Thames and he notices the fire seems to be carried on the wind. It's killing the pigeons that Londoners keep for food.
Pepys writes in his diary, "The poor pigeons I perceive were loath to leave their houses, but hovered about the windows and balconies till they burned their wings and fell down."
That's sad.
We know that other writers commented on the same thing. with strong winds and the unusually hot, long, dry summer. But what none of them realised was that these conditions were creating the perfect opportunity for wildfire.
Even with today's state-of-the-art equipment, a fire backed by a strong wind can be a nightmare scenario for any firefighter.
This is the Fire Service College in Gloucestershire, and I'm here to discover why the strong winds in 1666 had such a devastating effect. With the help
Gee, I wonder why.
of fireman Justin Thorne, I've built stacks of wood and paper to mimic the conditions inside the buildings that help the fire take hold.
If that's what it actually looked like inside the buildings, then you know, that's pretty negligent as far as not starting a fire.
So quickly.
We got shredded paper on pallets. I feel like everybody knows if you blow wind, it's going to give oxygen and spread the fire because it's blowing it over to other places.
We've created our
But this is cool.
very own micro inferno.
452 degrees, so that's a normal fire, temperature-wise.
But on that first morning of the Great Fire in 1666, we know the winds really picked up and the fire turned from bad to worse. Something we're going to replicate with this industrial strength fan.
Oh my God.
Whoa! That has happened so quickly! The fan on it, it's changed. It's almost a completely different fire now. That is unbelievable!
The oxygen from the wind acts as fuel for the fire, and in just 2 seconds, the temperature has jumped more than 500 degrees.
Wow.
That's gone straight up.
I've never thought about how much the temperature goes up when you add wind. That's interesting.
What are we looking at? We're looking at 1,000 degrees.
It went up like 500 degrees. My God.
That's 1,000 degrees.
1,000 degrees Celsius?
1,000 degrees. That's happened almost instantaneously.
What is that? 1,800 Fahrenheit. Okay. Wow.
Wind-driven wildfires like this are still an enormous challenge to firemen today. And it's terrifying to imagine what it must have been like in London 350 years ago.
I'm quite shocked at what I've seen here today. The devastating effect that wind has on a fire.
So how did they even put it out?
Making it almost impossible to put out. But think back to 1666 and the wind that was blowing, similar to the wind we created here today. It more than doubled the temperature of the fire. And with the primitive equipment available, it made tackling the fire a losing battle.
Whoa. You know, this video has some dislikes, I just noticed. Just a little bit strange. We need a horror movie about the Great Fire. That would be, you know, I think it's been long enough, 400 years. I feel like it's a little insensitive to make a horror movie about a real life tragedy, but 400 years, you know what? Do it. Actually, they did it about the Titanic. So yeah, go ahead and do it. It's remarkable that only 6 people died. Is anyone born in quarantine? Oh my God, 4 years ago. That gave me flashbacks. Okay. That was really quite fascinating. Check out Channel 5. That was really well put together. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Bye.